Day. Let me get this going. Oh my, got my dashboard open. Everything's open. We've got Madalyn Ward, who is a holistic equine veterinarian, which you guys, I think there's a huge deficit in holistic equine veterinarians. So I am super happy to have you today, Madalyn. You graduated from Texas A&M in 1980. You worked in an equine practice since until 1985 and then started your own practice, Bear Creek Veterinarian Clinic. Where is that?
Well, that I started the veterinary clinic in Austin, Texas, where I grew up, but I'm actually now living in New Mexico, and so the majority of my work now is consulting online and teaching.
That's awesome. How do you like New Mexico?
I actually love it. I'm up here in the Four Corners area in Farmington,
Yeah,
and I had never experienced this part of the state until I moved here, and I've just fallen in love with it.
fantastic. I grew up in Arizona traveling, and we traveled the Southwest quite a bit. So you are trained in homeopathy. You were the very first class of Dr. Pitcairn. Congratulations. You do acupuncture, bone therapy, network chiropractic, equine osteopathy. You're a American Veterinary Medical Association, American Association of Equine Practitioners, the Academy of Veterinary Homeopathy, American Holistic Veterinarian Medicine. Woo, girl. And
Yep.
you've authored 3 books: Holistic Horse Keeping, Horse Harmony, Understanding Horse Types and Temperaments, and Horse Harmony 5 Elements Guide. You are amazing. Thank you for being here today.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. And I would just add, I need to update because I'm currently the president of the Worldwide Alliance of Equine Osteopaths. And so, if anybody is interested in osteopathy, that group does accept members that are not osteopaths because we're all about teaching, just like this group that we're doing. We want our horse owners to understand about the function and the structure of their horse, and that helps our work then be able to be more beneficial.
Madalyn, were you trained by Yannick Blugan?
I was, yes, I
Yeah.
there again, first class,
Yep.
and back in the early 2000s, and it was quite a wonderful experience, exposure to that, and that's what a lot of my practice focuses on now is the two main things, the homeopathy and the osteopathy.
That's awesome. I know many graduates from Blugan Institute and have done Lori Muller's dissection class multiple times now.
Oh, Lori is amazing. She's a good friend of mine, and I haven't had the opportunity to do her class, but I know people that have, and I've seen the handout for it and heard just nothing but just amazing things about it.
So in this group, we do a lot of iridology, and Lori's helped us advance iridology because she's allowed us to take photos of the horses prior to euthanasia. We assess the eyes and then confirm the marks with
Oh, what
the.
great research. That's amazing.
She has really helped us so much. I'm very, very just in awe over her. And she travels so much with all her stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, how do you do this? But it's
Well, that's one thing about the osteopaths. Most of the osteopaths that I know are so dedicated and just want to help as many horses as possible and teach as many people as possible, and it's a passion for them.
That's yes. And especially if you made it through Yannick's course. So
Yeah, you have to be committed. You do.
yeah, tortured. And so yes, I've heard stories, absolutely. And I know his heart's in the right place. So today we're talking about equine detoxification. What There's so much here. I'm so glad that you're breaking it down scientifically. You hear a lot of chatter online like milk thistle, let's just do this, let's just do that. And there's so much more to it. And so let's get into it. Let's get into it. What causes toxins in the horse, Madalyn?
Well, you can have horses live in like we do, in a very toxic environment, but they don't have the option of going to Whole Foods and choosing, organic for themselves. So much of their feed is contaminated with herbicides and pesticides, and and some of the food too just isn't as in the way that it's grown, it doesn't have the minerals, especially the hay. And then some of the feeds, then the components of the feed have been sprayed and they're not good. They're not things horses would normally eat. So many of your feeds are based on soybeans, corn, wheat, vegetable oils. All those crops are very heavily sprayed and just not the same in nutrition that they were 40 years ago. And then the hays to be grown in some areas of the country, there again, they're going to be sprayed to prevent weeds. And some parts of the country have really good hay, and some parts of the country have hay that's pretty nutrient deficient. So the horses need, those nutrients, the proteins and the trace minerals and the B vitamins. Those are all needed for the detoxification process. So it's partly the toxins they're exposed to, and then partly the nutrition that they're not getting that they need.
And then internally, you mentioned that horses can be exposed just from their own body systems, which is super fascinating. You really never quite think about it unless they're sick. I was always taught that illness releases toxins into the body. But
Yeah.
what other things could do that?
Well, just the normal metabolism, the cells are constantly taking in nutrition and then releasing waste from their metabolic processes. So those wastes have to be processed through the body. And then many of the hormones, like if a horse is under stress and they have high levels of cortisol, that cortisol has toxic effects in the body if it remains high. It should just be elevated very briefly and then come back. And the reproductive hormones, those are, should be recycled in the body. The liver is responsible for doing that, and the gut needs to be healthy for that process. If that's not happening, you can have elevated levels of your estrogens and testosterones in the body, and those can act as toxins. And then your lymphatic fluid and your bile, those are fluids that the body uses to remove toxins. And so if those are recirculating in the body and not able to actually eliminate those toxins, then that's going to, just make the body feel more sick, all the time and just not be a healthy environment.
What are the symptoms that a horse owner should know to red flag a detox?
Right. So horses that have toxins in their system can have a wide variety of symptoms, everything from low energy to eye discharge, chronic nasal or respiratory infections. They can have a poor hair coat, um, tendency to have, if they get a wound, it doesn't heal well. They just generally not, they're just not thrifty. And one of the biggest things that I watch for in the horses, especially in the geldings, is they're going to have a lot more accumulation of smegma in their sheath, and the mares can get more kind of the same sort of substance between their teats. And then they can just, when I'm examining the horse as an osteopath, I can look at a horse and put my hands on a horse and tell they're toxic because their tissues just feel puffy to me, like they're full of fluid. The lymphatic fluid is backing up in the system. Oftentimes they'll have some swelling around their sheath or around their udder, stocking up in their legs, and so all those things are indication that the horse is and not detoxifying in as well as they should.
Madalyn, that's so fascinating. Is that the root cause of metabolic issues? It sounds like the puffy sensation you're talking about could be a precursor to IR or just an inflammatory response.
It's an inflammatory response, and so the metabolic horses, in my experience, are not detoxifying well, and it's a little bit of the chicken and the egg because if they already have genetically they have a slow metabolism, then they're not going to be clearing those toxins as efficiently, and then when they start to get toxic, it slows down their metabolism. So it just becomes to be, quite the cycle, and the metabolic horses seem to struggle more than most.
That makes total sense. Wow. That's kind of getting my brain spinning. Now there's levels of detoxification. I've heard veterinarians. I follow Dr. Karen Becker. She will talk about phase one, phase two, phase three. And what are those phases and how are they important?
Well, what about sharing that analogy that I talked about that was in the paper? So I think that can help people understand the phases because you can get into deep into the biochemical reactions that are happening in the different phases. And I have tried to do that with people, and quickly their eyes glaze over, and it's just, it's too much. And so what I've started talking to people about, if you think about the body as like a house, and say you have a house that you're going to, it's like a remodel, and it's got a lot of trash and everything stacked around, magazines stacked, and it's dusty and dirty, and so you want to remodel it. Well, you can't just come in and call a contractor and have them come in and say, hey, I'm ready for you to remodel my house. They're going to say to you, well, first of all, you need to clear all this junk out of here. So that's going to be like your phase one level of detoxification, is you've got to come in and remove all the debris.
That
But
makes
what,
sense. Wow, I love that analogy.
so that's your phase one, is getting the debris mobilized and getting it moving out of the house. So the challenge with that is that as you start pulling all those things up, and you're getting old mattresses and magazines and everything, and underneath all that, then you may be starting to uncover like mold, and just really bacterial infections, maybe some rodents. I mean, it's just a real hazard. So you've actually made your house more unsafe in that phase one. And that's what happens in the body. The phase one detoxification actually pulls the toxins out of the tissues, and treats them in such a way that they need to be removed right away, because now they are more reactive in the body and more toxic. So that's when you have to call in like the hazmat crew, and you need them. That's your phase two, is that they need to get that dangerous stuff out of there, as quickly as possible, and treat it in such a way that it can be eliminated through the kidneys, through the digestive tract, through the bile primarily. And if you don't have the enzymes and the amino acids and the proteins that are needed for that phase two, then if you're just throwing a bunch of things at the horse to start a detoxification process, they could actually get much more sick. So you need to be thinking about that. So then your phase three is it's got to all get out of the body. So you've put it all out in the dumpster in the front yard. Well, now the dumpster's got to be hauled off. You can't just like leave it sitting there. And that's where you've got to make sure that the kidneys are working well. And a lot of times in these horses, you have some subclinical kidney stress, and they're not able to filter out all these toxins as well as they should. And same with the digestive tract. If you have, I'm sure you've probably talked about a leaky gut. So if you have a leaky gut, you're putting all these toxins that are more hazardous, they're being put into the gut to be eliminated. They're just recirculating because they're being back absorbed through that leaky gut. So those are kind of the three phases, that the way I look at it, and you've got to make sure that all three are working well before you embark on any kind of detoxification program.
That's amazing. So I notice in modern veterinarian medicine that there's very little support for kidneys in horses. Like it's and
Yeah.
liver too. Like
Hey, same with human medicine. The kidneys are, so we put a lot of emphasis on the liver, which yes is very, very important, but the kidneys don't get the attention that they deserve.
I've had horses with kidney concerns off medications before and went to my vet and his answer was make them drink more water.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, that's it? And they're like, yeah, that's it. And I'm all, oh, we can do
How do you make a horse drink more water? The thing is that a lot of these horses, from a traditional Chinese medicine point of view, they're very damp and they feel very damp. And those horses don't want to drink water because their tissues are already waterlogged. And if you put more salt in their food or electrolytes, which is what you're often told to do, salt and electrolytes are very damp. And the horses don't want that. It makes them feel even worse and they drink even less water. So the way to get a horse to drink more water is get their kidneys working better. So they're eliminating that dampness from their body and their thirst will return.
so that would be your dandelions and
Hmm.
nettle and
Yep. Yep.
uber.
Exactly.
I'm a
Uva
big
ursi and
I love
buchu.
uber ursi. I
Yeah.
it's a short-term herb though. They can't live on it.
No, and they don't need to. They just need that support when they're going through. When you see that the horse is showing some signs of toxicity is when you need to step in and give extra support for those kidneys. Now, there's things that you want to do on an everyday basis so that the kidneys don't get stressed. And so that's going to be improving their diet and being careful about any chemicals that are applied to them, particularly damaging to the kidneys are a lot of your antibiotics and your non-steroidal anti-inflammatory agents are very damaging to the kidneys, and they're oftentimes overused, and and the kidneys are stressed, but you won't necessarily see it on a blood panel until it's very advanced.
I think that's really a damaging situation because we think we're in the okay zone and then you're not. Like it's
Right.
very like I think we're okay and these horses are peeing a little slow or groaning or it
Yep.
smells really
Yep.
rank. And then all of a sudden you're in a lot of trouble and horses can get kidney stones or bladder stones and a lot of
Yep.
people don't know that. I had a
Right.
horse that was super bronky, and it turned out to be stones from alfalfa in his bladder.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
no, they can have a lot of lower back pain with early kidney issues and general hind end weakness when those kidneys start to get weak. And yeah, we should just always be thinking about like just some support for the kidneys. I like to use a lot those herbs that you talked about. I like to be able to use those free choice if my horse doesn't have access to them in the pasture. So I will let the horses go pick and choose if they want to eat some dandelion and or some nettles or whatever, and just in a bulk herb form, just put out enough for a day. And if you can keep it under cover, it'll be okay for several days, and you can kind of monitor what your horse is eating when, and because that's what they would do in nature is they would be supporting all their organ systems by nibbling on whatever was available for them in their pasture
I love
or
that
in their
idea.
environment. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never free fed herbs like that. I'm totally gonna try that. Would you prefer the root of or the leaf or both of dandelion and nettle?
Your root will help support the kidneys, but your root is particularly good for the gallbladder. So if you're wanting to make sure that you've got good bile, now horses, of course, don't have a gallbladder, but they do produce bile. And so the dandelion root helps to keep the bile flowing freely and healthy. And then your leaf is more for your kidney, more like a mild diuretic.
I've always been worried about fly spray because I think dermal absorption is very dangerous.
It's a big problem. Yeah, it's a big problem. And I like to use the more natural fly sprays whenever possible. If you absolutely have to use a chemical version of fly spray, primarily just put it on their legs and just um, you know, only, for it'll last like 10 minutes or so if you need to get a farrier appointment or you need to, you're grooming them or something. But for the most part, there's other ways that we can control the flies without using the chemicals.
Yeah, I actually like putting a fan on them because I
Yeah,
feel like the fan keeps the flies off.
it certainly can.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm a big fan of fans.
Yeah, the
So
horses appreciate to get under cover and have a fan. It helps them a lot with with the insects.
I always forget to order the nematodes early enough.
Yeah.
And
Oh, they're amazing. I've been using them for many, many years. And so, that's just they're again just another way that we can lower the toxicity in their environment by using things for natural fly control versus dousing them down or having barn fly control spray systems that are dumping the chemicals on them every 30 minutes. It's really not good at all.
I used to be a show horse trainer, AQHA show horse trainer, and it just drove me crazy to see them like put the fly spray, this shiny stuff, and
Yeah.
all the chemicals that were going on these horses, and lo and behold, they're like crippled and their
Yeah.
joints are fusing together. And I really think that was part of it. I saw a pledge, like the wood polish. That was a fad for a while, is people were spraying their horses in pledge. And I was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah,
how awful.
WD-40 to do their mains. I've been there
Oh my gosh.
before I knew any better, So, yeah, we just, it's just awareness. We've got to. I think everything you do with your horses, you've got to be thinking, is this adding to the toxic load of my horse? And is there a way that a different way I can do this without adding more toxins in?
So what are your favorite binders or whatever, like if you have a process to detox? Because like you said, you're gonna like rip everything up and then all of a sudden that's circulating through the body and you're in a pretty dangerous situation at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that as a general rule, chlorophyll has a purifying effect on the body. So if they have access to pasture, to fresh grass, that is ideal. If not, then I'm a big fan of blue-green algae and either just the spirulina, the chlorella, or the AFA algae from Klamath Falls. Those are all going to provide some chlorophyll, plus they're very nutrient dense, so they have a lot of the B vitamins and the trace minerals in them that the horse needs for those detoxification processes. So that's how I kind of want to make sure that phase one is covered is, making sure that they've got those vitamin minerals, B vitamins, and a source of chlorophyll. And then with phase two, you want to think about their protein metabolism because so many of the amino acids that are used in that phase two detoxification process require sulfur. And the way the horse gets the sulfur primarily is breaking down the proteins. And sometimes these horses are not good at that. We get very concerned about horses having too high of stomach acid, but there's just as many horses, if not more, that don't have enough stomach acid. And so if those horses are getting a lot of buffering feeds like alfalfa or now so many of your feeds and everything even have these buffers, added to them. And
Sodium bicarbonate,
yeah,
that kind of stuff.
exactly. Calcium, a lot of calcium added, and that is going to dilute the stomach acid on these horses that already don't have quite enough. And so then they're not breaking down those proteins, so they're not getting those individual amino acids and they're not able to take the sulfur out. And so one of the things I have an IR Morgan and one thing he has taught me, and that's the thing with using the free choice, is the horses will teach you things that you would have never thought. And he loves sulfur. And he,
In what form? Like I have a
well,
humic fulvic product
the
that I love that has natural sulfur in it.
Well, that's one way that you can do it, and I've used it several different ways. What I originally he had some lameness, and I started him on MSM, and I just put it out to see if he would eat it free choice, and he did.
That's
And so I put
crazy.
more out, and he ate more of it, and he just couldn't get enough of MSM. And I thought, I looked at the label, it says dextrose. I said, oh, so this tastes like sugar. So I tasted some. It doesn't taste like sugar. I promise you, it's horrible. And so
I'm
I
taking it.
realized that he was really desperate for it. So after using the MSM for a while, I was like, I don't want to just have him on an MSM. I mean, it's basically a chemical. I need to find a natural source of sulfur. So I went to Advanced Biological Concepts and they have their S mix, and he did really well with that. So it's elemental sulfur, but it's got some other things added to it to kind of more complete the profile. I'm always concerned with giving individual minerals or vitamins or amino acids. I think they're all meant to come as complexes. But what I have him on now is I have him on Spanish black radish
Oh
from
yeah,
Standard Process.
from standard process.
Exactly. And he thinks those are the most wonderful little tablets that have ever been invented. And it's made a huge difference in him. He has really thrived with it. And so I really am promoting people if they have any suspicion at all that their horse is not properly digesting their proteins, that they get some sulfur, to them and in,
What
as in as natural form as possible.
what about garlic?
You can do garlic, but garlic is for horses that are in a warm environment. It can be very heating. And so there again, that's where I like to do it free choice. And I don't know if the Spanish black radish is heating or not, but I know garlic definitely is.
Okay, good
And
to know.
so I like for them to be able to kind of, say how much they want. And usually we put the garlic in the food. But I guess if you could throw some cloves out free choice and see if they wanted it. And on the chat, I saw the ABC price. It's called S Mix, just S for sulfur. And their products are meant to go out, free choice, and they do very well. And the only reason I switched off of that was just because the shipping was so expensive on it because it's fairly heavy. And the Spanish black radish is much more concentrated in the sulfur and a smaller, takes a smaller quantity.
What about microgreens or sprouts? Have you ever thought of that with the horses?
Well, I've used a lot of sprouts in horses, and I don't know if they have so much the sulfur, but they definitely have, are high in antioxidants. But there again, the antioxidants drive that phase one. Those kind that what the antioxidant in the sprouts are going to drive phase one. So you've got to make sure the phase two is working well. And I do the same with the sprouts. Is I have the company New Earth that has the Klamath Lake algae. They have a product called Earth, and it's a sprouts product, and it's got some wheat sprouts and some other sprouts in it, and the horses just eat the capsules right out of your hand.
Oh,
And
interesting.
and sometimes when they're really needing, if they've got a lot of inflammation going on, I will give them free choice as much as they want. And I've had them eat like 50 capsules at a time because sometimes you get that inflammation is out of control and you have to go high levels with your antioxidants to get it under control, and then you cut down. But
You
if you're
know,
just giving a little bit at a time, it doesn't ever get high enough to really quell that inflammation.
thank you for bringing that up because I really think the equestrian knowledge of supplements can be really like trendy, but not legit. Like, I am not a fan of getting fish oil to a horse. I just don't think it's species appropriate. What's your thought on that?
I have one fish oil product that I really like, and that's I think it's called Well Pride. And I know the owner of the company, and they're very meticulous about it being very pure because so much of your fish oil can have toxins and also very fresh. And so I will use that product because the fish oil actually can be a really potent antioxidant. And there are cases in history of horses eating fish, especially like sardines and such.
Really?
So I
I
don't think it's completely out of the possibility. There used to be a product called I think it was clovite that had some fish oil in it and also, B vitamins, and horses did really, really well on that. So it has to be the right fish oil and it has to be in the right circumstance. Um, but it can be beneficial.
Well, and then your storage, you have to watch your tack rooms heating up in the
Yep.
summer because it could
Yep.
go
That's true with any oil. And so
right.
that's the thing. You see these things, these oils on the shelf and they're in a 5 gallon bucket and they've got dust all over the bucket and they're being fed to the horses and there's just no way that that can be good.
Yeah, it's a little sketchy. I run into rancid oil products occasionally when I go through horses supplements because
Oh
I'll
yeah.
ask the
Yeah.
owner to show me.
Yeah.
Um, and because they don't have a gallbladder, how do they break that fat down? Because I thought that was another concerning situation.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
pouring a cup of corn oil in their food and they look
Mhm.
beautiful and glossy, but they're also obese
Yeah.
often and look
Yeah.
metabolic.
Yeah, no, shiny doesn't mean healthy. And you're right that the large amounts of oil at a time, they're not able to handle that because horses are meant to secrete just small amounts of bile on a continual basis as they're out grazing. So they can't store bile like we do if we eat a big fatty meal and their gallbladder will dump a big portion of bile, into our intestines. The horses are just getting a little bit coming out at a time. So if you are have them on extra fat, you need to break it up into several feedings. And I'm just, like I say, I'm not a big fan of oils. I would rather feed the foods, the rice bran, the chia seeds, the flax, things that have fat content and not the fat that's extracted.
I love that. Whole foods, whole food nutrition. I think it's such a smarter idea than synthetic.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's just no comparison.
But I feel like that's a deficit in the equine field. Like
Yeah,
they're people are more apt to feed a synthetic vitamin rather than feeding chia.
right.
There's been some debate whether chia is actually really healthy for horses or not. I've never seen anything negative other than more energy in a horse, which could be negative or not, depending on how you ride.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts?
I've had a few horses that didn't want to eat it, but I've never seen a horse have any negative effect from it.
Great. Yeah, I saw a TikTok video how they were like vilifying chia because of the fiber aspect of it and it's not bioavailable. And I I think the horse's gut is so tremendously long. It's got to be somewhat bioavailable by the time it hits the rectum.
There's some concern on whether you need to grind the chia or not. And my feeling has always been because those little seeds are very hard. And oftentimes people are adding chia to feed that they're already soaking. So in that case, it pretty immediately starts to become gel-like. It won't completely dissolve. It probably takes like 45 minutes to an hour for it to completely dissolve, but it starts to get slimy, right away. But I think if a horse has good teeth, then I don't think that you need to grind it. If it's an older horse that doesn't have good teeth, then you should soak it or grind it for them.
I love that idea. Taking that horse's teeth in consideration. Can I
Right.
change the topic a little bit about Cushing? Is
Yeah, somebody put on here it's gelatinous when soaked long term. Yeah,
right.
exactly. You do have to, it does take a little bit of time, but like if you're preparing the feed in the morning for the evening and you're soaking it, because so many of your pellets also need to be soaked long term. People don't realize that if you still leave that little hard core of the pellet and you've got a horse with not good teeth, that's really hard on them. So it's kind of the same, with the chia. So it has to be soaked a little bit longer, but you're still going to get some benefit even if it's not completely dissolved.
Right. I've seen people almost starve their senior horses to death because they weren't watering their pellets down. They knew their horses couldn't chew hay very well, but
Right.
they didn't realize their horses couldn't chew the pellets either.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Um, on the amino acid aspect, I'll come back to the Cushing's is glutathione. So
Hmm.
glutamine, glutathione, all of those amino acids, you would rather do a one complete amino acid profile rather than feed those individually.
I would want to find a food that had a good amount of those amino acids. And your glutamate or your glutamine and your glycine that are your cysteine that are used to make that glutathione. But like your cysteine and your methionine, those are sulfur containing amino acids. So there might be some occasion to feed those individually, but I would rather do it with the food. And one of the things that you might want to look at is if you have a horse that you don't believe is breaking down their proteins very well, is you can give them, extra enzymes. You can sometimes apple cider vinegar helps just to get that system a little bit more acid for them. And then if it's an older horse or it's just whatever you're doing is just not working, then you can look at the extruded feeds, and the extruded feeds will break those proteins down. That extrusion steam process, although you lose some other nutrients, it will break down those proteins into individual amino acids.
And when you're so the cysteines, like N-acetylcysteine, I know that's suddenly something as a supplement, not
Mhm.
as an
Right.
individual, that is gaining some steam in the equine field, which finally, because I love N-acetylcysteine as a detoxifying agent.
Yeah.
So
Right.
would you use it like that? Or I'm trying to think of like natural forms of N-acetylcysteine, and I
Well,
don't.
get the sulfur into them because
Okay.
the cysteine is that sulfur containing amino acid. So I think that sulfur is key really to all three phases of detoxification. And so you just want to make sure that those levels are good. And I could say you can feed the individual amino acids, and certainly short term, if you have a horse that you're really trying to help with the detox process, there's nothing wrong with short term using an N-acetylcysteine, using methionine. Those
DMT is nice.
exactly. Those kinds of things can be needed in kind of a short-term acute basis, but then you have to have a long-term plan. And that has to be how can we help this horse break down proteins?
What's the signs of a horse not absorbing their protein?
Um, you will see they'll start to break down their muscles
Oh,
because the body
that
has
makes
to have
sense.
amino acids. So that's when you start to see the muscle loss and the weakened gait and the structural weakness in the horses.
And I've seen that in viruses, that viruses attack their muscle structure. Could vaccines do the same thing?
Yeah, they because they're toxins with the vaccines, and also so many of our vaccines are for neurological diseases. So they affect the nervous system of the horse and create inflammation, and then you've got the heavy metals that are in the vaccines. So yeah, toxicity, neurological, I didn't mention that, so I'm glad you brought it up because neurological symptoms, including like horses can get brain fog. And we ride those horses and we say, well, they just can't focus today. Well, that's a level of toxicity that's affecting the brain.
Wow. I never thought of that. That's scary, actually.
It is, and then they're in trouble because they can't pay attention and they can't learn.
And then
But
they get beat
yeah,
or
or
sold
just
or
or
something.
just are scolded, or just they it's like, yeah, today was a bad day. He was really lazy. He couldn't do this. He couldn't do that. And the horse is probably thinking like, no, I couldn't. I tried. And so I think just having this in the back of my mind is like, is my horse really healthy to enough to do what I'm asking my horse to do?
Yeah.
And there was a question here about the fecal water syndrome. And that certainly can be related to detoxification, but it also is just that it's the horses not digesting. So oftentimes you see that in the winter when the horse is pulled off a pasture, which the horses are so able to digest pasture most of the time, even if it's a little dry, it's still just so much more digestible when the grass is still in the live form. Once we put it into hay, um, it's less digestible for them. So you'll see that free fecal water syndrome because they just get a lot of that fiber in their large intestine and it pulls water in and it's just not broken down enough. And that one of the best ways you can help them with the free fecal water is support the bacterial breakdown of the fiber with things like psyllium, which is like a prebiotic for those bacteria in the hindgut, and then also just either with soaking pellets, get them off of the hay, maybe put them on it to a more digestible, less fibrous hay, or even go with pellets that you're soaking.
So on the prebiotic, I always kind of laugh about horses and prebiotics because I think hay is a prebiotic because it's
It,
fibrous.
it is fiber, but the horses, I mean, the bacteria actually like the soluble fiber that's in things like your psyllium. Your beet pulp is a soluble fiber. The insoluble fiber is, yeah, they still use it, but it's not as easy for them to break down and really utilize to increase their numbers and to keep a real healthy environment of those fiber digesting bacteria.
How much psyllium as a prebiotic, not as a sand cleanse, would you use?
It's so depends on the form that it's in. And so I usually just go with some of the products that are designed for horses. And hopefully one that's, not going to have a lot of flavorings and sugar and everything in it. So I know the Aranus products, the SureGuard Plus is a good thing. If you've got a horse with fecal water syndrome, a lot of horses will respond to that. And it's not necessarily they have to be on it for life, it's just to kind of help build up that bacteria in the large intestine and until that it clears up.
I've had a lot of success with S. boulardii on that too.
Yeah, and because that can be a little bit different reason, that's really more kind of an overgrowth of your Clostridiums, but yeah, it's just like it all comes back to feeding the microbiome and recognizing what microbiome you have and trying to create more of an environment if for the good bacteria that you want to grow, that you want to thrive.
Madeline, do you do a fecal microbiome test on horses? Do you recommend anything like that?
I've had clients that have done that, and I think it's great. I haven't sent really any off myself. I think you can tell a lot by the clinical signs. For me, those puffy horses, the horses that absolutely crave the carbohydrates and are starving, hungry all the time, I think those horses are a lot of your candida horses. And they tend to be very toxic, puffy looking. A lot of times they'll have real itchy skin. And then if there's more of a Clostridium overgrowth, they don't necessarily look puffy and they aren't as ravenous, but they tend to have a lot more bloat, kind of a bloated look to them, which they can have with the Candida, as well.
I'm so
And
excited that you brought up candida and horses. Nobody talks about this, and I do muscle testing, and I
yeah,
get candida often.
yeah. If I think I've got Candida, I like to go with the mushrooms, the maitake and shiitake mushrooms. And I think, and you can do other things to do their gut. A lot of times, the 5-day power pack will kind of sterilize a dysbiosis in the gut,
Wow.
but it kind of takes out everything, and you've got to really come back with good therapeutic pre and probiotic treatment. Whereas if I use a product from Con Herb called Myco Protect, and when I use that, it just seems to take out the candida and leave the other good bacteria alone.
What about
Do you use
Powderica
vomica
for
source?
horses?
I haven't used Podiarco in a long time. I'm aware of it, but I'm sure that that would be, I think, like I say, I think I've used in the past without any being any harm.
Yeah, and using your method of kind of free choice, I
Right.
kind of like the taste of it. It tastes like old leather. And
Yeah.
so it brings back childhood memories of leather. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that would be a cool thing to try on that if you had a case like that.
I can't stay quiet forever on this now, Poppy. You know me. My horses will eat Padiarco like the from Star West out of my hand.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a lot of times the herbs they crave them.
Hmm.
And you know, and I'm always with that. I think the horses, not necessarily the horses that are on a lot of the traditional feeding methods, but the horses that are on a holistic program, I trust them on what they say they need and how much they need.
That's wisdom because I've seen box stall raised babies that have no clue.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Now they've got to be on the more healthy they get, the more they want the things that are good for them. Like I'll have people tell me, because I use a lot of the Timothy balance cubes, because I work with a lot of insulin resistant horses and I have an insulin resistant horse, and I have people tell me my horse won't eat he doesn't like the Timothy balance cubes. And I was like, no, your horse's microbiome doesn't like the Timothy balance cubes. That's just a symptom. When we get your horse's microbiome healthy, he'll like the Timothy balance cubes.
Interesting.
And that's been my experience.
That's so fascinating. My mind is kind of blown. So let's go back to the
I'm gonna
Cushing.
have to watch this one back like 3 times, Poppy.
I know I'm really
I know.
enjoying this,
Well, the
Madeline.
detoxification is not a simple subject at all. And there's just about the time that I think I've got it figured out, then there's a new wrinkle, that comes in. And one thing we didn't talk about also in that phase 2 detoxification is that requires a lot of energy for that phase. So if you've got a horse like we talked about in the beginning that's got a really slow metabolism, or they are ill, or have been chronically depleted of nutrients, and their mitochondria are not working well, that greatly interferes with their ability to do proper detoxification. So
So
a lot of these horses that are not detoxing, they're sick, and they need support for chronic disease.
I
Madeline,
I
do you ever use bowel nosodes in horses?
What kind of no-sodes?
Bell.
Bowel nosodes?
Oh, yeah, I have used balnosodes. I'm not an expert on them, but I understand them and I have used them, and I definitely think they have a place. I need to use them more to better understand them. But like my gelding out here that's IR, I've used balnosodes on him, and I think I've used, and that's the thing with a lot of these horses that have these chronic complex issues. It's not going to be one thing. You're going to have to do a lot of different things depending on what that horse is showing you. So I've used the balnosodes on him, and I felt like they played a part in his recovery and
Well,
and bringing him back to health. These horses he still needs to be maintained, but at 17 years old, he's so much healthier now than he was at 5.
Amazing.
Yeah,
I
because we just learned so much, from him.
Yeah, and the autoimmune aspect, I really think that people don't realize that so many horses have autoimmune issues. What about sulfur as a homeopathic remedy? Would you use that?
Sulfur is a very, very deep acting constitutional remedy. So if you go back to our house analogy, is that you wouldn't want to start a case with sulfur because you could stir things up way, way too much. You want to start some of those cases when you're just starting to take the layers off. You want to start them with the shorter acting remedies like your Thuja. I think, almost all detoxification protocols need to start with healing the gut, and I think Thuja, as a homeopathic remedy, heals up the leaky gut. Gets the junctions tight again. And so I'll start a lot of horses with Thuja, and then you can look at remedies like rust tox, Nux vomica,
Phosphorus.
starting. Well, yeah, phosphorus or sinicum, they're kind of on the edge. You can start, some cases with those, but I don't usually start those cases with like a sulfur or a calc carb or, those really deep acting mineral remedies. because you just get too much stirred up at once.
And are we talking, Mary asked, 30C or 200C? What LMs, Ms?
It depends on the case.
And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once I have a horse that I feel like that we've gotten them on a good diet and the horse is, functioning again, their metabolism is starting to work again, then I learned with Richard Pitcairn in the beginning, I'll often go with a higher potency of something like a sulfur and I'll wait and give that remedy time to act. And I haven't used a lot of LMs just because my horse clients, it's a little bit less convenient in the barn to do the LM dosing. But on a remedy, like Thuja and Nux vomica, oftentimes I'll use the lower potencies on those and give them repeatedly, daily even. Um, and I'm fine, with that.
that's great. Thank you. Um, back to Cushing. Is Cushing's a toxin overload? Is that what's causing the pituitary gland to go rogue? I see it in so many old retired show horses.
It's a stress overload.
Okay.
And it's the accumulation of free radicals over a lifetime, over and above what the body's able to naturally process. And so those free radicals in the body over time cause damage to the cells in the brain. And that's what sets the horse up for Cushing's. So oftentimes you do want to come in with antioxidants if as a preventative, if you know that you've got your show horse and they're under stress. But I don't like to feed high levels of antioxidants all the time to horses that don't necessarily need them because the body actually uses free radicals in the detoxification, process. So we don't want to interfere with that. But yeah, those horses that are early on and you're starting to see signs of Cushing's, you do want to step up antioxidants for them. And it's not so much a toxicity, it's just that toxicity is part of the ongoing stress.
The malfunction is creating the toxicity, but you want to address the malfunction of too much free radicals.
Right, exactly. And yeah, toxicity is one way that the free radicals can be formed, but it's also just the miles and the stress and the hauling and the shows and all of that just takes its toll.
And the stress being cortisol, adrenaline, but also hormones.
Yeah, the cortisol. Yeah.
Yeah. What about drug toxicity? How would you approach that? Diane wanted to ask about osphos. She has a horse that had a possible reaction to osphos and wanted to detox that out and didn't know how to go about doing that.
Right. I haven't used OSPOS. It came along, after I had switched my practice more towards the holistic side. I'm not a fan of it. And I think that we have natural things that we can do that will support the bone and the healing of the bone in a better way. As far as detoxing from it, I would just look at some of these things that we've talked about, because the body will, it's not like they have, I mean, the body knows how to detox, substances. It just needs to have support. And then if you've gotten, if the diet is good and the horse is basically in pretty good shape, the homeopathic remedies that come immediately to my mind for detoxification are going to be Thuja and Nux vomica for drugs, oftentimes.
You are a true parent. Trained.
Yeah, yep, I am. And I claim it. I claim it proudly.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
On binders, I wanted to ask you about binders. We haven't talked about clays, zeolite, anything
Yeah.
like that. Do you use them?
Short term, absolutely. Yeah. A big fan of aloe and slippery elm and marshmallow root and all those mucilaginous herbs. I think your binders, they're going to be short term. You don't want to use them long term. But yeah, in a situation where your horse is, acting like it's like in its gut or something. It's seems definitely to be toxic. You can use those binders if you think you've got some ulcers there. They have a tendency to coat and protect the lining of the gut. Um, but yeah, not as a long term, not as a cure. More as a palliative agent. But your Spanish black radish it detoxifies the gut. And so like I say, there's a lot of different ways that you can support the horse with the detoxification in that gut so they feel better while you're working with them to get them healthy.
I know the Yonic crew loves French green clay.
Yeah,
No, I've never
absolutely.
used it. So
Yeah.
what would be a dosing recommendation for that?
It's been a lot of years since I've used the green clay, but I would just guess that you would want to give, I think they usually do like a 10-day course, and I would probably think like a couple of tablespoons a day would be the way you would dose that. And depending on the circumstances, you could even go twice a day. I mean, it's very safe. It's not harmful in any way.
What is the difference between bentonite and French green clay?
I think just the French green clay is considered to have, fewer impurity, less likely to have impurities. Um, it's been a lot of years since I've looked at it, but I think that was the reason, is that it was a very clean form of clay.
Excellent.
Would you use binders like I know we have to feed back the gut post antibiotics, but just had a guy with chronic Lyme. We're trying one more time with an antibiotic. We did minocycline for 30 days, and his gut is clearly off. He's clearly malabsorbing because his coat just changed on me, and
Mhm.
he's a little off. So I was thinking bentonite for like a month. How long do you normally use a binder?
I usually go like 10 days because your binders also
Okay,
bind your nutrients. So just
right.
as an aside, there's a company called Immubiome that is mushrooms, colostrum, and probiotics. And one of the products, I know the owner, Chris Colmone, and he's a very, very knowledgeable. He developed these formulas for healing for himself, and he has an immune formula that has turkey tail. And he says that the Lyme organism can't evade the turkey tail,
Interesting.
and it's a very powerful.
Oh,
uh,
that's really good to know.
I didn't
yeah,
know that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
antibacterial, and in China it's used for like treating cancer. It's very powerful, and so says on those chronic Lyme cases to use his immune, and I think he even on really severe cases he will even I mean the Lyme's cases he'll do a strong formula of
Huh.
just the straight turkey tail. But yeah, the Lyme's cases are hard because the Lyme's cases are not just Lyme's.
Hmm.
They're the horses that have that complex chronic illness.
Hmm.
And so you've got to come at them from all directions to bring them back to a place of health. And just focusing on the Lyme is not going to be, as you have seen, not
Hmm.
not generally going to work.
Yeah, he became mine 4 or 5 months ago now because his owner could
Yeah.
not get things done. And I said, look, I love him. He's mine for $1 and I'll bring him to thriving. So
Yep.
thank
Yep.
you.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are your thoughts on EPM?
It's kind of similar to the Lyme, it's the horses that are prone. I mean, any horse can get EPM, but it's got to start with a leaky gut. And and then once they get it, if they don't have a good immune system, you can treat them with all of the products endlessly and they'll just reinfect. So you've got to heal their gut first. And then if you use one of the chemical products for EPM, you've got to also support the body with other natural products. And I use to support the gut. And I use either a product called Carbo or Carbo Combo. And then also another one of the mushroom products from Immubiome is their spine and nerve. And depending on the amount of neurological damage, I'll use the spine and nerve and the product called Nerve Boost. and use that alongside the drugs, and to truly heal the horse so that it doesn't just immediately, relapse.
What about colloidal silver for healing the gut lining? I also love calendula.
Yeah, I haven't used colloidal silver in that way. I mean, it certainly has its place for like treating infections. And so I guess if your leaky gut was secondary to like a dysbiosis, then I could see it would definitely have a place.
And on the I'm just going through like thinking about all our disorders that seem to repeat themselves over and over again, like Lyme, like EPM, is the fact that the reoccurrent factor all stems to leaky gut. That's what you're saying. And you're saying that a dysbiosis to the leaky gut or just the leaky gut. What is your thought? Is the toxins are causing the leaky gut? Could it be heavy metals?
I think, yeah, I think that there's so many different things that can cause leaky gut. Just about everything we do to our horses is damaging to their gut microbiome. And the bacteria, the healthy bacteria in the gut are what feed the lining, the cells that line the gut wall. So if we don't have a healthy microbiome, then the cells don't get nutrition. And so then you start to get a breakdown in those in the tight junctions. But there's so many different things that can cause that. And that's why I always say that every time you look at your horse or you're going to do something with your horse, ask the question, is this supporting my horse's health and their microbiome? Because once you lose that microbiome, it can be a real challenge and take time to get it reestablished.
I,
And then it just sets the horse up for so many more of these chronic disease syndromes.
I do think that's a primary component to founders.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I actually did a fecal microbiome transfer orally with a foundering horse, and that horse had a really good day that day. But we didn't know how often to do it. Like none of the vets in our area knew anything about it. So I was like, well, we have nothing to lose. Let's just give it a go. And I fell short on probably dosing, but it definitely improved that horse for that day.
One of the things I used to use a lot of probiotics and use them in high therapeutic doses, and I had some good results with that. But then there are other cases that I didn't have good results with. And the thing is that if you don't have a environment for those probiotics to establish, then you're not going to have success. So now I actually look more at healing of the leaky gut before I even start the therapeutic probiotics. And oftentimes they have the bacteria, the population of beneficial bacteria, they just can't colonize because they don't have a healthy lining to live in. So by getting that lining healthy, you may not need then therapeutic probiotics. The ones that are there will start to thrive. So, and at the same time, if you put probiotics into an environment that's not conducive to them being able to survive, then they can actually, through dying, create a more toxic environment. So, uh, not on every horse. I'm talking about the really sick horses, these complex chronic disease horses. Most horses do great with probiotics, and if they get a little off with their gut and you give them a good therapeutic probiotic, they'll just bounce right back. But if you have a horse that's not, then you have to take in consideration that it's a more difficult, complex situation going on.
Can
Really
Madeline,
good to remind
what,
us that
oh,
terrain is so important.
It is.
yeah,
The
The
terrain
terrain,
is
the
terrain
terrain
is
is so much more
everything.
important. It's a setup for everything.
It is.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
Madeline, what's your favorite probiotics? There's so many out there.
Yeah. Well, as far as therapeutic probiotics, I like the ones that the ones that I've always used are from New Earth, and they have like an acidophilus that's a like I think it's like 5 billion colony forming units per capsule, and then a bifidus, same thing, and then they've got a spectrobiotic, which is lower count of numbers, but it's a wider range. And so they're human grade probiotics, and they'll, people will say, well, horses don't have those in their gut as much, but they must do something to, as Janice said, to set the terrain, because I have such good results, using those. But I think now there's probably a lot more good quality probiotics out there. I've been using these for 30 years, and there didn't used to be other good ones, but now I think there probably are. And then I use a lot of Probi from ABC, which is more like a postbiotic. And it's like helping to create the environment for the probiotics to be able to thrive.
Have you done a fecal microbiome transfer on horses?
And not recently, but when I first got out of school, back in the early 80s, if we got a really bad colitis case, we would do that. And, we would tube them with the manure, filtered through, and we didn't know what we were doing. But we just by seeing horses that would eat manure and foals eating manure, and so we just did that, and a lot of times it helped.
I know Legacy Biome, which is a canine fecal capsule,
Mhm.
is looking into the horse space.
Well, good luck finding a horse that has a healthy
Well, that's what
microbiome.
I was gonna say is,
Yeah,
trying to find a healthy donor for that one
right.
horse. I was like, I don't know. I guess I'll use one of
Yeah,
mine because they're pretty healthy and
yeah,
they
yeah.
don't
If
get
they're on a
vaccines.
holistic program, and yeah, no, chemicals, then you might have a little bit better shot at it.
You'll have to follow the wild horse,
Yeah, that's exactly
all the
right.
herds.
Yeah,
Could be a whole new industry.
Oh
yeah,
gosh.
right.
Let's not exploit the wild
But there
herds, poor
again,
things.
there again with the fecal
I'm
transplant,
just,
you've got to have the terrain, you've got to have a healthy gut lining.
And so can I jump
Please, I was waiting for you actually.
listen, this is like Brayson poster child. So I know it's so dynamic, and so I'm asking you a hard question to probably answer in a linear way, but when we're talking about the gut, the leaky gut situation, do you have a start here to help heal that lining, then this next, then this next?
I start almost all those cases with a single dose of Thuja 1M.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I can't prove it, but just from what I see on those horses, I think it heals those tight junctions. And I think it oftentimes does it pretty quickly.
So
And
just the tablets, you're using like the little
the,
tablets,
the
the
little
homeopathic.
pellets,
Yep.
and I'll do like 5 of the BB size pellets in
Hmm.
like 10 cc's of water directly in their mouth.
Yep.
And so that's the way I start if I, suspecting a leaky gut. I start so many of my cases on Thuja just with almost like assuming that they've got
Hmm.
some level of leaky gut. And I want to feel confident that that leaky gut is on the mend before I do a whole lot more else. Because if they have a leaky gut and I start putting them on a lot of different supplements, then a lot of those horses are already have autoimmune issues and
Hmm.
food sensitivity issues from absorbing
Hmm.
undigested proteins through that leaky gut. And so
Hmm.
I start putting them on a bunch of other things. They're going to become sensitive to those as well and have that immune system be triggered. So I try and keep it pretty simple and working with cleaning up their diet, taking a lot of times I'll take out like almost all the supplements and
Hmm.
get them on a really simple food. That's the thing I love about those Timothy balance cubes is it only has like 5 ingredients. It's like the Timothy hay, some beet pulp, and some calcium. And I don't think it has calcium. It's got zinc and copper, some selenium, and that's about it. It's very simple, but yet balanced. And then just give those horses kind of some time to heal. And if I feel like that gut's starting to work better, then I will come in with, depending on what the condition the horse is presented with, start to address those symptoms with either additional homeopathy or, sometimes put them on something like the blue-green algae, just
Hmm.
to know that they've got got some good, make sure their nutrition is covered. So that would probably be step 1 is to seal the gut. Step 2 is to make sure the nutrition is adequate.
Hmm.
And I am a strong believer in hay testing.
Hmm.
So if the hay tests low in minerals, then I'm going to want to balance or out of balance in minerals. I'm going to want to balance those minerals. And then the third step would be then looking at what can we use as a homeopathic on a deeper acting homeopathic remedy to really bring them back to full health.
Hmm. So my horse sort of did that to me. Took me
Yeah.
took me backwards. And remember, Poppy, I couldn't do any supplements. He was like, no way. So I've learned a lot about self-selection. He's getting to a point where he's wanting other things. So I think and we did I say it wrong, but Thuja.
Yeah, Thuja,
Thuja.
a lot of people pronounce it that way.
That's okay. Poppy says I have a heart. Well, don't hurt myself when I try to say any of the homeopathic remedies. And so colostrum, I've heard you mention a couple times. He is on it. He wouldn't eat it 2 years ago. Now he ate it out of my hand. So maybe we're getting to a
It
place where his
depends
gut.
on the colostrum too, because horses, tend to shy away from animal proteins, in their
Yeah.
diet. But the immubiome products, it's
Hmm.
it's the first day colostrum, which is just almost 100% immunoglobulins.
Hmm.
So it's not really like milk, whereas
Hmm.
a lot of colostrums are like 2, 3, 4 days, and then they have much more milk or whey protein in
Hmm.
them.
Hmm.
But the colostrum, even Chris's product, a lot of times horses don't want it initially, but then they can get, once they kind of start to feel the benefits, then they accept it much
Yeah,
better.
he self-selected no spine and nerve, but he's been on nerve boost for about 2 years.
There you go.
Yeah, but that doesn't have unfortunately, it is just straight lines main. Anyway, really, gosh, oh my gosh. Poppy, we need her on more than once.
Well,
I
and
know.
Madalyn, you do personal consultations
I
via
do.
Zoom.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So we definitely can have students sign up for that. And if you're doing any other extra guest speaking, please keep us in the loop. And I would be more than thrilled to have you come back.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's been a fun call, very educated audience. I love
We,
that.
we are very passionate about it. I could ask 100 more questions, but I know we're all tired at this point. So
A lot. We covered a lot.
we did. I think we did good.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time, your wisdom, your lifelong expertise. It's fantastic.
All right. Well, very congratulations for what you're doing and that you guys are wanting to learn how to understand your horses and take better care of them. I think that's fabulous.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much,
The,
Madalyn.
the
All
more
right.
we know, the less we know.
Oh, isn't that the truth? The more there, I just look at it, not the less I know, but the more there is to learn.
It's true. That I like that better. Thank you.
All right. We'll see you later.
Take care, you guys. Have a great week. I'll see you next week. We have Kelly Bone on the call. She is going to be talking about how to manage and your dogs. If you have a pet poisoning, or we're also going to talk about how to vet your vet or vet your wellness coaches or anybody else in the industry. So cool. All right. Take care, Madalyn.